What is up, everybody? This is Shawn with the EOT News Flash Network. Just want to let you know that our show is brought to you this week by Flipside Gaming. Make sure to go over to flipsidegaming.com to get all your singles, sealed product, comic books, and many other needs. Again, that's flipsidegaming.com. Use our promo code EOT Newsflash to get yourself 10% off your order and give our show a nice little kickback. Now on to the show.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of the EOT News Flash. I'm joined with Shawn and Justin this week, and we're going to go over some pretty fun topic.
All right, so we're gonna first dive in. Star City Games is coming to Dallas. I know at Texas we have a lot of events coming up pretty soon, and they recently just announced that the release weekend of Rivals of Ixilan. It's Rivals, right? Not Explorers. Explorers is the board game they made. Yeah. So Rivals of Ixilan, they were going to be a standard, which was going to mean that back-to-back on release weekend they were going to do a standard tournament. Their reasoning that they're changing it is that they want to see how Rivals of Ixilan impacts all formats, and the best way to showcase that is to bring one of the growingly popular team tournaments to Dallas. So it's going to be the first team tournament I know of happening in Dallas. It is going to be constructed standard, modern, legacy for the Star City Games with Rivals of Ixilan rolling out, which means we're going to have theoretically, I think in hope, you'll see a bunch of Rivals cards across all three parts of the table. In actuality, you'll probably see just a few.
Maybe there'll be a pirate.
Yeah, maybe there'll be a pirate. But the theory being that by doing all three, we will hopefully see. So they'll probably watch for covered matches to try to find teams that are using all three if they're winning. Which brings us to a good question of, in the year Magic 25, this big anniversary year they have coming up, they've made a lot of team events. They've gone as far as to make a Pro Tour team constructed event where we're going to have standard, modern, legacy at the Pro Tour. So there's a lot of mixed opinions on team events, and I didn't really know how you guys stood on team events. Justin, what's your stance on team?
So when we're talking about, because there are two team constructed event types with multi-format and shared format. In this case, we'll talk about the multi-format. I think the pros are going to be, it allows legacy players to actually play in competitive level tournaments more than once a year. Not everyone has to play standard. I think that's always a pro. And so, I mean, like, I was kind of down on this tournament. I was thinking, like, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't. I'll probably end up going. But, now I get to play Modern. So that's exciting.
Nice. Steven, what do you think about team formats that are multiple formats?
So as far as the multi-formats go, I think it's pretty neat to get kind of like a specialist in each format. You can have some overlap between like player experience. Like, for instance, Kevin and Ambler and I were going to team up for GP Santa Clara if we could find a third, and he was going to play lands, and I also played lands and legacy. So if you get a team that has like multi levels of experience across the formats, you can actually have a pretty solid, like, all right, does like someone need a powwow session? All right, here we go. Let's all focus in, get it. Or you can be on the split side of that. Everyone just kind of sticks to their own lane, and maybe you ask like for mulligan advice. And so it's a pretty unique experience, and I would highly recommend the team tournaments at least once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me personally, like, I think team tournaments are a cool idea. I haven't hated them, but I also haven't loved them. I've kind of had a weird relationship with team events because, as cool as it is to have the idea of going, I like going to tournaments with my friends, but I don't really like having to count on my friends to play or them count on me. I like at the end of the day for me to be able to say, like, I succeeded or failed because of what I've done in my game, not because two of my teammates drew real poorly all day or because I had a teammate who was kind of doing their own thing. And also don't like I've gone to tournaments before and I've done the team event. We had a team, was it in Houston or San Antonio?
San Antonio.
So we had Unified Modern in San Antonio, and I played that one, and it was fun. The first round of day one started off heated for my team until we kind of found a rhythm and communication where we weren't communicating super well, and we ended up finding a balance later. But it was an element of the tournament that kind of just started me off with not really super loving the idea of it. And then whenever they start running numbers on how much higher success rates pro teams have than every other team whenever you go into a team event, that's a little frustrating. It's not
Yeah,
as bad for an SCG because there's not as there's good competition at SCGs, but there's not like as many platinum pros and stuff that you're running into. But pros, which is logical by nature, have a higher win percentage at team events than other teams in a larger amount than just pros win percentages on their own in single events, because you have a team has to beat 2 out of 3 platinum pros to win the series, and it's the 2 out of 3 platinum pros who are discussing and working together. So I'm kind of torn. I like team events. I also hate team events. I don't want to go to a team event and afterwards be like, man, I punted. I also don't want to go to a team event and afterwards be like, my friend punted, and so we're frustrated because if we missed day 2 by 1. So I don't know. I'm kind of mixed. I don't love how many of them there's going to be this year. It looks like there's a fair number of big events that are going to be team based.
yeah, but they're actually split up all around the world. So
Yeah.
like the U.S. is only getting one, and then there's one in Canada. Like
Well-
that's it as far as. Well, okay, I guess they changed the SCG changed, so now we have another one in the U.S.
Yeah, I would say there's SCGs,
yeah.
and SCGs typically do a couple of these team events a year. We have the GP. We also have the Pro Tour. So it's like a little bit more push.
Okay,
and
the Pro Tour doesn't quite count for the majority of us.
But it definitely counts because it's all about like what kind of content we're getting and what we're watching. So like, the event exists. The event is a team event. So we have more team events happening this year than in previous years.
But I think watching the team events is actually pretty neat because if you ever have a lull in one of the games, you can just slide over and catch the other ones, and then you also get like you get tenser situations, and then it's just like, all right, like person A lost, person B won. It's all up to this one that we've been watching from the beginning. Like, let's see how it goes. Like, it just adds to the story.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a cool thing. I'm still torn on it. Now, as far as playing a team event, do you have, Steven, do you have any ways that you would have your team attack team events? Like, is there anything what do you do unique for team events as far as communication, deck selections, things like that?
So the main thing, well, it kind of depends. Like team limited, I would suggest like 3 meetups of like building pools and going through the whole process. So like you spend you get an hour and a half, I think, for deck building. It's pretty long, like in total, like opening packs and everything. But you need to do that a couple times. If you're doing a unified format, you need to figure out who's stronger and what archetypes, and then figure out what cards you can spare. And then if any decks kind of get eliminated by that, because like, energy would take Aether Hubs in this format, and Aether Hubs are mildly important in Godfarrow's Gift and not very important in Mono Red, so those might be decks that you could pair with it. So it's just like finding those interactions in a unified format, and then in the Team Trios Constructed, the kicker there just comes down to being comfortable with your deck and, trusting your teammates, really. Like, if they have a good track record on it, then, yeah, by all means, have them play that deck. Don't let them switch last minute, or don't try to force them into a deck that might be awkward for them.
Right. What about you, Justin? You got anything unique that you would have teams do as you go into team constructive? It's predominantly like this multi-format team structure.
Yeah. So the only thing I would say is, I think this is the best opportunity for rogue decks to shine, because everyone's going to be so focused on making sure to play the best deck that no one's going to be ready for a rogue deck in this selection. So if you have a team member who has a solid, rogue deck, is not ally mill, but something else, that's actually a good way, I think, to steal a number of wins in these team events.
I think
I'd actually think it might be the other way around.
I think rogue decks are worse in these only because you have 3 players who can put their heads together and figure out what the rogue deck's trying to accomplish and how to stop it. Whereas a rogue deck against one random player, that player has to have an understanding of what that deck's trying to do. So you have a higher likelihood that your opponents are going to know what you're trying to accomplish if you run a rogue deck into 3 opponents as opposed to 1 opponent.
Yeah. Like, and in a format like Modern, where you can figure out what your opponent's on based on what land they play turn 1, like, sometimes, you can get the advantage of the rogue deck in that instance, but like it's typically pretty easy to identify who's on what, even on the weird ends of the spectrum.
I know I enjoy the chess match of the middle seat because so there's a lot of debate like should middle seat be your best player or should middle seat be your best modern player if modern's in your middle seat. Then you have to go to the next level of, well, you want your middle player to be able to finish their game so that way they can focus on helping the other players, so they want to play this aggressive deck. But then if other people are following that same logic, then do you want to play this like more interactive controlling deck that beats these like more aggressive decks? So that way you're shutting down the middle seat and just one of your side players have to win it. And I think it's really kind of determined based off of who your middle seat player is and their personality and their multitasking ability as far as whether or not they have the flexibility to help in the middle of a game. Because if you give your middle seat person, a Jeskai control deck in Modern, it's going to be a lot harder to ask them to stop what they're doing regularly and help both sides with Legacy and Standard while making sure that they're controlling the game. Whereas if you give them like a real linear deck, an Affinity or a Humans deck, they can help more, but people are more expecting of these linear decks in the middle seats because they're going to be helping. So that chess match I've always kind of found interesting, and I haven't really... I still lean towards I want linear aggressive in the middle seat, and that way the games are at least over quickly, whether it's a win or loss, and that way they can just help make sure that the people next to them are making the optimal decisions. But whether or not that's accurate, I don't super know. That's just kind of the way I've always leaned.
I think I have the other side of the fence there because I don't believe that the seats really matter. Like you just want people to be doing their thing, and like for instance, I set an A in San Antonio, and whenever I got done, which wasn't very often because I was playing taking turns, whenever I got done, I would just kneel beside our C seat in between B and C. Like you can still get like that level of influence like with all your players. It's just like in the middle of games at the very start, your middle player is going to be a tad more influential just on like mulligan decisions and things like that. But you still can get that like level of communication from A to C. Like you just have to go through B most of the times. Like it's funny.
See, that's where the problem is like I personally lean towards whenever I watch like Owen Turtenwald's and stuff who their group's playing, they're discussing more than just mulligan decisions. They're actually pretty frequently discussing. And so like if your middle seat player isn't able to discuss because they're on like a really complicated deck, say your middle seat player is playing Lantern in Modern, and so they're really trying to pay attention to what's on top of the deck, and they really need to make sure the game's going streamlined and efficient. Then you're losing like this massive communication ability that's supposed to give you an advantage. You don't always need it, but I think that's why I'm saying like I think it really depends on your team structure. How much is your team gonna communicate, or how much is your team gonna do their own thing? And so if you're gonna have a team that's gonna try to communicate real heavily, like you have a team that's so say Steven, you and Kevin Ambler and me make a team, right? And I'm sitting in the middle seat. And so Kevin's on lands on the right, you're in Standard on the left. Then if I'm playing a slow deck like Lantern, I'm kind of a hindrance because I'm not being able to have a lot of communication and not able to enable you guys to help each other as effectively. So,
but keep in mind, like you can just like call a judge and be like, hey, I need to like kneel real quick right here. Is that okay if I like take like 20 seconds to do this? And they'll typically like be like, okay, yeah, as long as you're not like standing up trying to like you don't go above a certain threshold where you can potentially see their cards. Like you can still move from that seat if something is that important that needs your attention.
You can, but again, it's also yet again it's all about your deck decisions because if you're taking 20 seconds, 30 seconds every 4 turns to discuss something, or every 5 turns to discuss something, and you're on slower decks, like you do run the risk because like the games go inherently longer because there is the discussion element, but you don't get more time to complete these games. So like that's why I put so much emphasis on like making sure that middle person can communicate, because you don't want to go in and because you're trying to communicate and make the best decisions, then you end up drawing rounds. So,
but see, like I don't think that you should be doing that every couple of turns either. Like I think at some point you have to really like just trust that person to know what they're doing, and they have to have a level of confidence in themselves to be like, yes, like this is what we should be doing. Like, yeah, you should use your teammates for information, but keep in mind you're the one playing your deck. You're the one that's familiar with the situation that's currently going on. You're going to have the most information. You might pull them in and they might have a bias from something that doesn't affect what's going on right now. You might pull them in and they might miss a card. Like you have to have that level of confidence to be like, all right, like I can't just rely on them like turn after turn. And I know you're saying like every 4 or 5 minutes, but it still shouldn't be quite that frequent either.
I think 4 or 5 minutes is, if you're not communicating every 4 or 5 minutes, I feel like you're missing out on the value of it. Like if you look at the pro teams, if you look at the platinum pro teams, they aren't going 10 minutes without communicating. That's not happening. Like
Right,
they're communicating regularly because that's the whole point. Like, so if I'm not communicating regularly, if I go the first 15 minutes and we have no communication, then whenever my teammates do try to help me on a point, they have no idea what's been going on in the game at this process. Like you're that's just my stance. And again, it could be different, but I watch these pros who are super successful with it, and they're communicating real regularly. They're aware of what's going on in the other games, and they're staying up to date on it. And all of it comes down to your ability to multitask and how you feel about the situation, and each of your familiarities with each person's deck. So like I don't play lands and legacy, so obviously I would have minimal, outside of trying to figure out what our opponents are representing by their actions. I wouldn't be able to help much with plays for lands. But if you have familiarity with the deck, I feel like 2 brains working on your deck, if they're aware of what's going on, is pretty helpful.
And another thing you have to consider, like regarding the pro teams, is most of them have the time to commit to playing their teammates' deck and like getting a very good understanding of it. Now, like your average team isn't gonna have that luxury unless they start testing like 2, 3, 4 months in advance, just so that they can like really pick up the like more the finer, like workings, the inner workings of a deck, really. So like for instance, whenever we played against Sam Pardee and his team, like all of them like had experience with the other person's deck, and it was like really easy for them to just be like, all right, yeah, like this is like what you should do. And like their communications were like very quick, and they were to the point. Like they weren't like drawn out as just like, all right, should I do this? And it was just kind of like a little vote, like yes, like something like that.
Right.
I don't know. Like maybe like what we've seen from the teams is different, and so it like could just be our perspectives on this.
It very well might be. So I mean, it kind of depends. It's just really, again, I think it really 100% depends on your team, how your team can communicate, and what your team knows. But you also don't want to like leave opportunities to make best decisions on the table. Like nothing is worse than getting up from the table at a team event and a game being lost, because this is what kickstarted my tournament in San Antonio while I was mad. Getting up from the table, a game being lost, and then like, well, we had no option, and somebody in the team going, you actually could have done this play had we discussed it before you just fired something off, and you would have had a like 10% boost in your percentage chance to win the game. So like that kind of situation, there's nothing more tilting than leaving the table and a teammate going, if you communicate with me, we might win that round. And so like you just don't want to risk that being left out to dry.
That happened to me at San Antonio as well, like where one of my teammates lost whenever he had the win in his hand. It was just like, hey, look, like slow down, hang on, like trust me real quick, because like he was getting frustrated at the situation just because of the opponents he was facing all day, and just like I understand like you're upset, but like you still can't, like you like we're here to help, and just it didn't happen.
Exactly. So just. It takes time. It takes getting used to, and that's another reason why it's tougher for non-pro teams. Beyond the fact that the pro teams are so much smarter and better at this game, not necessarily smarter, but more prepared for this game. But these pros are playing these events a little more often because they're traveling to the team GPs and things like that, and so they understand the communication aspects a little bit better. So it's just an angle from there. But as we transition on, we have our Team SCG, so I'm sure we'll have a lot of feedback for how that goes, because those are always very unique tournaments coming up. Speaking of multiplayer things, Magic has released a lot of statements and articles always around the holidays because there's not as much news and tournaments going on. They announced any changes they're doing. We had our specialty set come out, so there's a lot of things going on. Justin, there was a change to our promotional product that we can get. What's happening with our promotional product?
So we can say goodbye to dual decks, and in place of that, we're getting something called a challenger deck. They're getting rid of the dual decks. I mean, I can't remember the exact official reason that they came up with, but essentially it's that they're running out of ideas. The quality of the dual decks is going to start being hurt by the fact that they don't have an infinite number of forces that they can send against one another. So the challenge deck to me, though, sounds very similar to the event decks that were being released at the release of, or close to the release of each set, where it's supposed to be not necessarily a competitive level deck, but a near competitive level deck, so that someone who's starting to get into the competitive side of things can have this pre-built product to where they can go and they can actually expect to do decently well at an F&M or a Saturday Showdown or things like that.
So, I remember, was the last one the one that had Inquisition, the white-black deck from, like, I think it was Zendikar block?
The modern deck, yeah.
Yeah, the modern event deck or whatever.
Yeah, the black-white tokens.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm all for... Because, so standard is their baby, right? Like, that's where they make the most money. So there's one thing that never made sense to me was these dual decks, which I haven't bought a dual deck in a long time. I, won one in a drawing a little while back. The last one I bought was because I got a Blessed versus Curse for, like, $4 when a store was going out of business, and so they had them super marked down. But I never understood why this was a product they were producing as opposed to standard-based decks that were more competitive than the intro decks, to just get people playing more standard, because the intro decks just aren't super competitive. So if a player goes and buys an intro deck and goes to an F&M, they go 0-4, they go 1-3, they don't have a super big reason to return to that F&M unless people are really welcoming. Whereas if you make a slightly better standard deck or a slightly more fun, well-designed standard deck, they go 2-2 and they go, oh, I want to upgrade this deck and come back next week and see if my ideas are smart. And so it makes sense to me to, like, produce more. Hopefully, I mean, it would be cool if they do some modern ones for some reprints, but I bet most of them are going to be standard-based decks, and they're going to try to boost our standard accessibility for newer players. Or every once in a while, it's fun just to pick one of those up and try to play an F&M without looking through the deck and see how you do with it. I mean, I'm all for opening the door for more people to show up to F&M. So, I mean, that's my take.
Yeah, and I mean, some of these event decks from the past have actually been pretty sweet. I mean, the Battle for Zendikar one had Hangerback Walker in it. It had, a lot of the parts of the 4-color Rally deck before people had figured out 4-color Rally. So that was pretty cool. How they had done that.
I mean, so it would be cool. So they test decks and they have the Future League, right? And they test these cards and they see what's broken, so they can try to fix it, and they get all that stuff. It would be cool if, like, the top decks from the Future League they start printing. So they go, like, this is what our Future League says the format will probably look like. And like, so go and start printing those decks whenever you're not going to adjust the cards anymore. And that way that comes out and we get to see what R&D's conclusion was as opposed to what the format's done, and have it released a little while after the set comes out. And so that way it's like we get to see, like, how close were we to what R&D was scared of, or did R&D, like, have an interaction that we haven't noticed yet? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's not what they want because they don't want to guide the format and the metagame as much, but I just think it would be... I've always wanted to have more transparency with what R&D's doing to what we're seeing in paper.
Well, they occasionally release articles with what they were expecting the metagames to look like, just in their like play design review of different sets. I know it's not consistent with every set. It's typically like once every like year or two maybe, but there've been a couple around. Like I think I recall one from Theros and Innistrad. So
yeah, no, I just like those articles. I like to learn more about them.
Yeah, they're pretty neat, especially like the "oops, we missed this."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't like those articles as much. No, I don't like those nearly as much because it's like you could probably pay me a lot less than what you're paying those people to tell you this. So.
Yeah, but you got to keep in mind, like, the cards are like continually changing, so it's very easy for something to just like slip by and untested or something.
Don't toe the line, Steven. We need to all hate them together so they fix it. So. All right, so moving forward, we got holiday season, so we'll have some holiday themed things coming up on the show. But the big holiday gift for Steven, the whole reason he went out and bought his fancy Santa hat, is that we have the return of our cube. So we have, is this the Vintage Cube, or what is this one called?
Yeah, it's the Vintage
The
Cube.
Vintage
It was
Cube.
originally the Holiday Cube, and then they turned it into the Vintage Cube because they realized they could make money off of it 2 times a year by releasing it in July as well.
Excellent.
So
So,
yeah, it's
so we have our
it's
Vintage
probably
Cube.
yeah, it's probably one of the most entertaining cubes you can play. Although I can't say I've enjoyed the card changes they made for this one. Although I think Search for Azcanta is really sweet for the control deck. But anyway, so this version of the Vintage Cube, you get to see the Ixilan stuff, and then you actually like they took out a combo or two. But but so the major archetypes for the Vintage Cube, you have Storm, which is probably the most iconic one from Cube because that's the one a lot of the streamers will try to play just because of how entertaining it is. It's very hard to draft. But if you can like go through some of LSV's videos and kind of get a good idea of the core cards and what signals you can be expecting in order to get the Storm archetype. You're mainly looking for like a couple tutors and some of the fast mana from the artifacts. You have red-white control, or like some sort of like prison or sneak attack deck. Typically, you're just trying to either blow up your opponent's lands with a Armageddon or a Johnny, and like just have some value enchantment or a creature going for you. Like a Hero Bladehold is really good with like Smokestack, things like that. You also have Green-Black Value Town, which is let's see. It used to have Birthing Pod in it now, but I think that's recently been taken out. So I think their main archetype or their main go-to is Recurring Nightmare and a little bit of
so stupid.
Mater.
I hate that
Yeah,
card.
but see, Recurring Nightmare is actually one of the weaker archetypes though at the moment, just because of like how quick other things can get going. You also have Blue-Red Artifacts, which relies on Duretti. I don't think Dak Faden is in this one. I know like Ralzeric and a couple others are, but basically the whole idea of that is to just create a metric crap ton of mana with your artifacts and then play some big fatty like Sundering Titan, Blightsteel Colossus, or if you're fortunate enough to tinker for them. Let's see, you also have Mono Red Aggro, which will forever and always be a deck in Cube. Although they did slightly nerf it this go around with the removal of Kolaghan, Dragonlord, and something else.
Well, hold on. I don't want you to be a liar. Wasn't there previously a cube where it wasn't mono red aggro? It was like a shifted cube, and it was like mono blue aggro was the deck.
Yeah, there's a mono blue aggro deck.
So
yeah,
it's not always in the cube. Sometimes we get creative and we play Phantasmal Bears.
you could have still played mono red aggro in that cube, but yes, you are correct. There was a Phantasmal and Illusion cube, but that was the cube that was designed by someone in the community, not designed by Wizards. So that cube was really sweet. Though. Yeah,
that cube was cool. It was like one of the last ones I've played recently.
Yeah, and then you have the blue-green ramp decks, which you're going to be looking to your Terrastodons, Woodfall Primus. And you can also kind of play Show and Tell on this list as well. Channel is the big pickup for this one, and the Eldrazi Titans. And you're just trying to get a bunch of mana dorks and maybe a Rafellos if you're lucky, and you just create all the mana and play all the things. Get a little bit of Palinchron action in there too if you want. Heartbeat of Spreen and Palinchron goes infinite, so have yourself a merry little Christmas.
Cube just gives me such a headache. Every time I try to do a cube, I'm just like, this is so absurd.
So, my favorite cube deck was at my graduation party last year, and my buddies and I were all drafting the Vintage Cube together. So we opened up a Recurring Nightmare, and then like later on we eventually get a Baleful Strix, and then we eventually get a Palinchron. So, with Recurring Nightmare and a Palinchron, we can play Recurring Nightmare twice, and that only uses 6 mana, but Palinchron untaps 7 lands. So we were able to go infinite with Recurring Nightmare, Palinchron, plus any other creature. Okay, now the best part about this, whenever we got Baleful Strix and Palinchron and Recurring Nightmare, we were able to go infinite and draw the entire deck. So that was a lot of fun. The fastest we killed someone was turn 4 because we were also playing High Tide for value.
No, see, I played Recurring Nightmare and my opponent had like Thragtusk and Wormcoil Engine cycling. And I was just the worst experience of my life. I was like, this is just terrible. This is the worst. I don't know. It's just such a headache playing it. I'll always get in there, and I always make what looks like a really good, fair deck, and then I just like run into just stupidity, and
Yeah,
it
but see,
just
that's where you're
drives me
going wrong.
nuts. And partially it's because I hate Magic Online for leagues whenever it's limited.
Yeah, leagues are really dumb.
Because I did try to do a cube like 6 months ago, and I drafted this like blue-black kind of control tempo deck, and it wasn't bad. But I played against 3 straight blue-white opponents. All 3 had Force of Will, all 3 had Jace the Mind Sculptor, all 3 had Day of Judgment, and all 3 had Armageddon. And I was like, what is this? Like, why am I playing against just like, if I can't beat the first one, why are you pairing me against it 2 more times? Like, it was just the worst experience. So I personally hate limited leagues overall. It just drives me insane, especially if it's like drafting, because you're like, I'm not cutting anybody. I don't know what anybody else is doing. Like, I lose all this advantage from doing the actual draft, and it's just which packs I open, which packs did you open? Let's see.
So, Shawn, I guess you would be happy to know that there is single elimination vintage queues. So you can do the 8-4s effectively.
That I
And
would
the
consider
queue
doing
on-
a lot more than
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would do that way more than a real league. So, but I don't know. Speaking of Magic Online, we're going to transition. Justin found us an article by Melissa Del Toro where she's talked about something we've talked about previously on the show a couple times, which was the impacts of digital Magic the Gathering, Arena, which is in its beta, can't say anything about it, and MTGO, and how it impacts their card design. And specifically, she used Whims of Fate as her first example. But tell us kind of what she was saying as far as how the digital Magic design impacts their ability to actually build a card.
Okay, so back in Theros, there's a card called Whims of Fate, and what you do is you pay 6 mana for the sorcery. Each player separates all their permanents into 3 piles, and then each player chooses one of those piles at random and sacrifices those permanents. And piles can be empty, apparently. But anyways, apparently this just like completely broke Moto for a little while, and because there had never been an effect like that before. So it turns out we've actually been experiencing the digital effect on Magic for far longer than I thought we had. Because since then they've actually developed a team that's specifically a part of our R&D to say, hey, that'll make things a pain in the butt for us if you design a card with that wording. So they focus on like reducing click counts, reducing unnecessary targeting, triggered abilities are rarer now, and things like that. For the most part, this was actually fairly relieving for me. Like, the things that they do to reduce the click count doesn't really bother me. Unnecessary targeting means that we get more things that get around Leyline of Sanctity. The one that kind of bummed me out was the reducing the triggered abilities. Like, they use the card Adonto Vanguard as an example, and it's as long as it's attacking, it gets +2/+0. And it's a 1/1. It can pay 4 life and gain indestructible, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, cards like that, reduce chances for opponents to misplay and miss a trigger. It means that, like, I can't cast a spell in response to it attacking and getting that +2/+0, since it automatically gets it as soon as it's attacking, as a replacement effect rather than a triggered ability. And there's a bunch of minor things where that can impact how people can play against an ability like that. But I was relieved to see that design won't be changed going forward, most likely, because the design has already happened. Or these design changes have already happened.
Yeah, so already kind of used to them in some regard.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It explains why sets are coming out faster on Magic Online. I remember used to you had to wait weeks, after a set releases. That was the original reason we had cubes, was because set would come out in paper. So they would do cube online because nobody wanted to play the old set, because you would have to wait a couple weeks and then the set would release online. And now the set's releasing like same week. And so, I mean, that's pretty cool. So I like that they're working together more, because I think that's giving us a faster turnaround. It did kind of sound like, she didn't flat out say it, but it did kind of sound like whenever they discuss with the R&D department or the programming department, the fact that if something is super complicated or hard to instill, like they'll adjust the wording, or they'll try to adjust it to make it easier for programming purposes. And also when they design cards, they're going to try to make it applicable for Arena and MTGO, which it comes back to my old concern before, where like Arena, they're trying to make it really streamlined. I'm on the beta, like it's really, they want to make it very fast, a lot like some of the current ones. And so like, are we hurting our card design in future sets because we want to have this high speed, more flashy, quick to interact with? If it doesn't look like it'll translate to our digital games very well, are we not going to design it? Are there old Magic cards that are really cool Magic cards to play with that aren't feasible anymore because just adding an extra pile to a card like Whims of Fate gave them headaches? So just because any small change you make to a coding can translate into a really difficult thing for the coding department, depending on how it's all structured. So more unique cards, they just have to give them more warning, so that's cool. But I just don't want to see us going into simplified Magic, because we've already gone down that path a little bit with the new combat-based, creature-based Magic the Gathering. So more simple Magic is not what I want, just because it becomes boring and repetitive. But
I gotcha.
So,
and I agree.
Yeah. So hopefully it's not indicative of big changes, but it is cool that they're working together, and it is giving us our product faster online, which is helping for tournaments, because you're able to start testing sooner, as opposed to being like, well, I have to print off all these proxies or like go out and spend, a lot of cash on a deck to test the deck, to decide I don't like the deck, to go build another deck whenever tournament's coming up, because it's not out online yet. So that's pretty cool. It's also making the off-brand, like rip-off Magic sites, the Cockatrice and the X-Mages, unless you're doing it for financial reasons, a lot less of a reason to use those, because used to those had pull because you could get the cards on there before they were on Magic Online to test for a tournament. But now if you have like a rental system, or you have a good collection online, or you're going to be doing a limited tournament, you don't even have to worry about using those, because sometimes the interfaces are a pain. So that's a nice effect also. But speaking of design, so we are going to start doing our weekly design challenge. And so this week we're going to have a Christmas themed design. I had made a really complicated Merfolk design. I'm going to figure out a better way to explain it later. But we're going to do a Christmas theme Magic card. So our Magic card for this holiday season that each of us have to design a copy of is going to be an EOT holiday card that's going to cost 1 generic mana, a red and a green. So it needs to be a 3 mana elf goblin. Your power and toughness, it's up to you for your design. And it needs to have a each player chooses effect. Think of like their promo holiday cards that Magic always releases. It needs to have a naughty or nice effect, where each player is going to choose naughty or nice, and then we are going to decide what that effect is going to be. Does that make sense? Okay. Does anybody have a card ready to design?
I have the outline of one.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so naughty, nice. If someone picks naughty, opponents will have to sacrifice a non-land permanent and replace it with a Coal token, which they can pay 2 mana to destroy, but until it's destroyed, it pings them for 1.
Okay. Destroys a permanent and replaces it with a Coal token?
They sacrifice
okay. So the opponent picks a permanent and sacrifices it. Okay.
Yeah. And then the nice, you get a gift token, and when you pay 2 to break your gift, you get to look at the top 6 cards of your deck and put one of them into play with CMC, 3 or less.
What does it cost to activate that token?
2.
2? Okay. So it can be 2 cards for one. It can be a land?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Steven, you got Any naughty or nice ideas?
Mine was just kind of basic. I was thinking of just like a 2/2, and then whenever it ETBs, just be like deal 2 damage to your opponent, and then the nice would be both players would draw a card at the beginning of the next upkeep.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, at the beginning of your next upkeep. So,
Okay. So you
it
get
come
the card
back to
first.
your turn. Yeah.
Okay, but so would that be that
But you
just
draw
the
it at the
person
same
casting
time.
it chooses naughty or nice, the other player doesn't?
Yeah, the person casting
Okay.
chooses.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So I was trying to figure out a way because I wanted to be like super elaborate, but also like wanted to be simple. I debated naughty being like you get to deal 3 to a creature and 3 to the opponent, so like a Searing Blaze. And the nice is like search the library for a basic land, put it into play tapped, and draw a card. But I don't really know. So I think for naughty, I like the idea of doing the coal tokens and the present tokens and things like that because that feels more like their holiday cards.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe let's see. I don't know. So what about if the naughty so naughty effect is each player chooses naughty or nice. If a player chooses naughty, their opponent reveals a random card from their hand and takes damage equal to that card's converted mana cost. And then if a player chooses nice, that player searches their library for a basic land card, puts into play tapped, at the beginning of the next upkeep, they repeat that process. So they get 2 lands off the card if they choose nice. They get damage if they choose naughty. Does that make sense? Or the naughty,
Yeah.
the naughty is just infinitely better than the nice, and the nice is just infinitely better than the naughty in that situation. So I don't know if that would work. It might be like maybe naughty is they reveal a card, it deals damage to each creature that player controls and that player equal to that card's cost, and then the nice is the 2 land effect. Would that make more sense?
So I mean, if they're just revealing a card from their hand, they just reveal a land
At random.
And just at random. Okay.
Yeah. Or it could be like so naughty. Your opponent reveals a card at random from their hand. It deals damage equal to their creatures and to them equal to the CMC. If a land is revealed this way, re-choose between naughty or nice. So you could just keep going naughty until you hit something. Or if it's the one card in hand, you get to then go choose nice instead. So you're not just like out. But I guess naughty we want a little bit of gamble there, so maybe you don't repeat. And then nice would be land into play tapped, next upkeep, land into play tapped. Or maybe it's like land into play tapped, next upkeep, land into your hand from your
What if it
library.
was land into play? Both players got land into play untapped and create a clue token.
Both players get a land and a clue token?
Yeah.
I can see that. But so for your nice, I want whoever chooses nice to get a slightly larger reward. So maybe nice is both players get a land, you get a clue token. Right? Because
How about both players get a clue token, you get the land?
that makes sense. Just something where like you get rewarded for being nice, your
Yeah.
opponent gets hurt for being naughty, but if you choose nice, you get like a long-term effect. Like something that impacts the game longer. You've got a land
Yeah, that kind of helps
and
you
you're
out.
going to get a card, they just get a card.
Yeah, and if it's better in green, red's color probably doing it that way too.
Yeah. Okay. So naughty is they reveal a card at random, deals damage to the creatures and the opponent. Nice is you get search your library for a land, put it into play untapped. A basic land, put it into play untapped. Both players get a clue token, or we'd call it a present. Just so
I mean, investigate works because you're investigating the presence. So like
yeah, but you want it to be
that would work as a keyword.
but you want it to be
then
more
you have two
flavorful.
keywords.
So I would
Nice
I would just
and
call it
investigate.
a present, and it only costs 1 to crack, but it's the same thing as a clue.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
Just so I instantaneously get my free card.
I don't know. I just
oh.
personally really like the idea of the little baby Coco on this little present because it's just like, what is it? What is it? And then you look and it's like, oh ha, this is what it is.
Yeah.
What if the present token was 1 mana and it's both players draw a card, but it only belonged to you, so you could choose when to activate it if you wanted to, and you still get the land untapped. So like you could do it right then, or you could wait.
effects, man.
I don't know. I could.
Because it's like you're pulling a Christmas cracker, right? Like there should be something for both of you.
Yeah. But I want to give myself something a little bit more for nice, because like you really want to,
Okay.
because naughty can like decimate an opponent's board, like so you really want to reward yourself being nice. So it could be like you get a present that you pay 1 to sack, both players draw a card, you get a landed to play untapped, and you gain 2 life. So you get these 3 things. But if you choose Naughty, you have the possibility of just like decimating your opponent's board, dealing damage to them, and attacking, like a small Bonfire of the Damned.
It just sounds like naughty and greedy to me.
No, okay, you know what? Because so Naughty has to hurt you because you've been bad this year, right?
I know. I was just kidding.
No. Naughty does have to hurt you. So Naughty could be like, they reveal a card, both of you take damage equal to the cost. Their creatures take damage equal to the cost. So only your side doesn't. And then like 1 land doesn't untap next untap step. Something so like you're set back.
I think it's getting a little too complex, but
that's the whole point, bud. Like,
okay.
You got to be hurt somehow for this. Santa doesn't just go like, doesn't wag his finger. You get Krampus. So we gotta Krampus these people. So I don't know.
That's why you need to give him a coal token.
Yeah, or just put a cold token on a land. Cold tokens mean your lands don't untap next untap step.
So that'd actually be pretty cool art. Wait, don't they have a card Naughty and Nice?
They do
already. Yeah, no, but I was thinking, so for the elf goblin, right? You could have the goblin be in the shadow and he looks kind of menacing, and then like the elf half of him is in the light and it looks like hopeful. Yeah. So you just kind of have like this weird shadow that's being cast by something, and you just have these two, like you have not a split.
I was thinking
card,
of like a vertical split image.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of like Change of Heart from Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
See, I was imagining this as like a little goblin, like the Pathfinder kind of goblins. I don't know if you're familiar with the Pathfinder art, but they've got real big head, sharp teeth, big eyes, and they look super mischievous. In a Santa hat, and then he's got elf ears glued onto his regular ears, was how I was imagining this card.
I can see that. I don't know. I love their holiday cards. So we have a few general ideas. I don't know how any of them are very good, but that's the joy of joke sets. We don't have to make sure they're balanced or anything like that. So continuing along our holiday lines, we are still missing Alex. He's still on hiatus with his adventures. So his most recent adventure, Steven, where's he at right now?
So speaking of goblins, some got into Santa's workshop, and Alex is currently going through the presents that they tampered with that were quite unstable, you might say, and he's going through and product testing them and whatnot, making sure they're fit for the children.
He's eating all his spaghetti and his syrup. Like a good elf. There we go. Yeah, that makes sense.
Going through and making sure that all the chocolate is safe, so you get pre-bitten candy for Christmas.
Yeah. We're gonna have to whenever he comes back on, we're gonna have to ask him about every single one of these stories. We're gonna have to do a what was your stance whenever you were announced at one time? Yeah, a huge Q&A. And if his answers aren't creative, we bounce him back off for another year till he gets more creative. So that's what we'll do. So, all right.
I like.
I think that sounds good. That'll be our next Alex conversations. We have to ask him about everything he's been doing. So, but that'll wrap up our show. So we've talked about a lot of card design. Try to keep it a little bit shorter. We're gonna talk only metagame whenever there's not cool news to talk about, because there's enough metagame solutions out there. So, but for EOT Newsflash, you can find me on Twitter at Busted Sleeves. You can find the show on Twitter at EOT Newsflash. Justin, what is your handle?
At Justin Faulkner.
Super clean and simple and easy. And Steven?
At S Spellpierce.
At S Spellpierce, all right. So we will try to be back again next week. We were not here last week between Star Wars and end of the school year and all this jazz. Schedules didn't line up. But we'll try to be back again next week. So if you have any show concepts, card designs, anything along those lines, definitely please bring it in. And Steven, what's our next step?
Well, I'm pretty sure we're just going to come back next week. So let's do it again.